So it's a good few months since we last worked on the Buick, and we've had Christmas and a load of workshop renovations going on. So today's the first day we've had a chance to really get into it, get the fuel tank back on, get the jerry can fuel tank off, and get the car running on its own steam. Relatively easy process of refitting it with new fuel line clips and new Jubilee clips, but that's all gone back in, and without any real dramas. And finally have it running off of its own fuel tank. So we're going to be able to move on to the next stage now, getting a service done and changing out the failed hydraulic bonnet prop so it can stay up on its own steam as well. But plenty of condensation, but a good fire up, and that is condensation, not smoke. So we're back. It's been a few months since we've really worked on the Buick. The fuel tank's back in, and this morning I'm going to go through, I'm going to show you the underside of this thing, because to be fair, it's been dry stored in a garage. We had hoped for 10 years, but it's lovely underneath for a 43-year-old car. So I will show you a little bit of that, but I'm going to go through like a bit of a basic service today and get it one step closer to hopefully going in for an MOT next week. Have a look. I mean, some of these bits, like the air filter here, I've seen much worse. So I'm not expecting this to be a particularly bad condition in terms of servicing and so on. At the end of the day, it's done less than 14,000 kilometers, which is 9,000 miles in its life, in its 43 years. That's all it's done. So I'm not really expecting any kind of dramatic stuff, maybe a few slightly seized bolts and screws, but let's get going. Let's have a look. I'm going to show you underneath this thing and just show you how nice this is. So as you can see, it allegedly was rust proofed at some point in its life, and to be fair, you can kind of see that this isn't Schutz. This is just the underneath of the car. As you can see, the fuel tank back in here, but everything, including the exhaust system, which would probably show most signs of corrosion and so on, is in really good condition. All of it really, really good. Still looks silver. All of these floor pans, generally speaking, have got very little sign of corrosion, just a tiny, tiny little bit of surface rust, and that goes along. All the clamps, the sort of places that you normally see where they've been taken off, put back on, taken off, put back on, up, new ones used, old ones used, and they're normally rotten and rounded, you know, and that goes right along the car. I'll try and bring this in a little bit as well, down towards the engine bay. And you can see up here, you know, ever so slight corrosion here where you'd expect. We've got a nice dry sump area. The radiator holders are really good. So yeah, overall, it's really, really good. But let me just show you this. See, corrosion assessment tool. Hitting it far harder than you should do on an MOT. Everything is really solid. And these sort of things, which you normally are really prone to the rusting, it's really, really solid. So this car, for me, it's a real genuine sitting there, having done nothing for near enough most of its life. So first up, we're going to get the oil out of it and see what that looks like. That cracked easier than I thought. And you know what? That doesn't really look too bad. If you look there, it's definitely in need of it. And it is without a doubt a bit black, but it's not horrendous. Feels okay. I shouldn't think really this thing's had that many oil changes in its life, so we'll let that drain out. And chuck the kettle on. So whilst that's draining, what I'm going to do, I've got my new oil filter here. One thing I tend to do with all of these, because we order them in from the States before I kind of try and take off the old filter, just offer this up just to make sure it's going to fit size-wise and there's nothing radically different. You could be left waiting a few days, waiting for the right filter. If you break the one coming off, then this doesn't fit. That one came off pretty easily. And to be fair, it's not an overly rusty filter. So the oil's quite black still there, but in bad condition. The rubber seals stayed on. Sometimes these just fall apart when you take them off when they've been sat there. I didn't even have to put that much pressure on it to get it off. Oil up that new rubber. So I'm going to let that all drain as fully as I can do, and then we'll go topside. So up top, everything looks really good. In all the kind of key areas on the strut top mount there, mounting points, down on the chassis rails where they meet the front, everything's equally as uncorroded and in good condition, right down to all the kind of stickering that's still got all the wording on it that's clearly readable. All your little sort of wordings and write-ins are all in really good nick. Great sort of potential for kind of overhauling this cosmetically for someone down the line as well. So, yeah, really good news on this. So we've already done the air filter on it, as showed you before. We'll just take the airbox back off. So again, things like the carburettor and so on, we know it's all in working order. And generally speaking, all the kind of gaskets and rubbers are really, really good on that. So we're quite happy with that. We've already done, as part of the kind of seeing where the car's at and get it running process, we've already changed out the plugs. They were kind of fouled up by people trying to start the car previously. We'd had a go at it as well. So once we had it running on our own fuel tank, a jerry can up here, we got new plugs in it and we could see what we were working with. So we know we've done all that side of things. So I'm going to get some oil in this as a next port of call. So on this, we're going with everything I've read up on it, looking at it. It's a 530 fully synthetic oil for it. I've gone for quite a nice one in terms of Shell, just to get that kind of around the system after so long. Once we test it and we're out driving, just making sure we'll maybe review the oil if we need to think about oil pressure or if we've got too much smoke and so on. So, but this should be the right call on it. Just give that a little dip just to see where we're at. All right, perfect. Once that's run for the first time, that should be enough there to refill the oil filter, but we'll check that again. So just getting the leads out. Got the distributor cap, new ignition coil all fitted. We've had to use the old cap on it because it didn't come with a cap. That's a challenge of American car parts sometimes, particularly when you're being impatient and can't wait. So that's all the leads on, and we're going to go for a fire up.